Welcome to Duncan Thorin Shield's YouTube channel. I managed to con Duncan into convincing his friend to pay me thousands and thousands of dollars as a professional Counter-Strike player, so maybe he can convince you that some of his analysis is correct.
s1mple is on an elite team. That might not sound like a crazy statement to make, right? His team's obviously one of the best ranked in the world, number 2 or number 3, depending on what kind of ranking system you're using. You go back to the end of April, Na'Vi was actually ranked number 2 in the most popular ranking system. Surely Na'Vi's been an elite team the whole time. They've been in finals, they've now won tournaments, they've been in many semi-finals, had a lot of great placings going back to the end of last year. But actually, if you go back in time, even a few months, and obviously further back in s1mple's time in Na'Vi, s1mple's only chance, seemingly, to win trophies and to really have the kind of team that could actually supplement and make use of the raw talent and insane ability he has would be leaving, would be going for an SK deal, or going to FaZe is the one people often suggested, or rejoining Team Liquid in some mad sort of reunited moment with on-off lover Elige, in the sense of they obviously had their issues back then, but I think they now appreciate each other as players. They're both people who've developed into much better players and now understand what it's like to hard carry a team and not win. Maybe that could have happened. Or the other option, seemingly, was you've got to get more sick players to the resort. You've got to get Adren and HawpT from Gambit, or you've got to take that massive risk and go for the huge buyout and get Angel to come in as this big fragging in-game leader. If it wasn't one of these moves, bringing in sick talent, Na'Vi letting s1mple go out the door to another team, he seemingly was just not going to be on an elite team, on a team that could actually be the best in the world, could win the major. Now, that's despite the fact s1mple was one of the best players in the world in 2017, the year where he didn't have all the results. Now, I actually do think personally he went quite unrecognised by a lot of people. I thought it was an absolute outrage that people ranked players like Fallen above him on that list, Rain above him on that list. I think you look at what s1mple was actually doing last year, he was unbelievable. I mean, I made a tweet about it, I think it was around just after the player break maybe, that for me, okay, Kenny S might have been the best player in the world at the time. He had the best team. He was having MVP performances, going deep in tournaments. But I actually, and obviously Cold Zero was the player I had as the best in the world for most of the year. But I actually thought by about just after the player break, s1mple was the best fragger. He was the best individual player, taking out all other context of what you do for your team, how good your team is, whether you get deep enough in tournaments. You just put a guy in a game to frag to save your life. I would have picked s1mple back then. But he didn't have the team around him to support him. He was never going to have a massive amount of success. So what happens? He gets Zeus back. After Gambit wins the major, they have the breakup, Zeus comes back. Okay, so he's got a legendary in-game leader now, but that wasn't enough. Actually, things were still fairly poor in Na'Vi. They weren't making deep playoff runs until the latter part of the year. But okay, he gets some help finally. He gets Electronic. They make the buyout. He comes in, someone who's shown talent in Flipside. Seems like one of the burgeoning young players within that region. But Electronic comes in, for whatever reason, whatever role they put him into, he seems to be playing more of a laid-back role. He seemed to be way too up and down at the time, and he definitely wasn't a legit star player when you put him against Tier 1. So as a result, you see the matches, it's s1mple going ham. It's a team that looks very disjointed. They can't execute Zeus' style, very limited map pool. Electronic's not a star, Flamey's not a star. It's just one huge star player in s1mple going off, trying to hard carry. It's actually comparable at that point in time, except for the fact they had a legendary game leader, although he wasn't really implementing his style very well, to the Mouse Sports that had Nico in. I think it was actually comparable to that in terms of lack of talent, lack of support, not a good enough team around you, can't make use of these amazing performances. So you looked at the results up to that point in time, early this year, quite frankly, they were bullshit. They were good results. He had some top 4s, had a finals finish, but you look at it, DreamHack Winter, first event with Electronic Online. No elite teams, because at the time, Mouse Sports was still on the rise. Gambit had fallen away with Zeus having left. Then you come to the major. They finished top 4. One of the best placings that a squad like that could hope for, right? Yeah, but you look at how they did it. They didn't really beat any really elite teams at the event. They had the most bullshit quarterfinal draw. Literally, they got the easiest quarterfinal opponent in the history of any major because they got the worst team to ever make the Legends spot, the playoffs at a major, Quantum Bellator Fire. They very easily took care of them. And not only did Quantum Bellator Fire was a very whack team, but they even had to pick a map into Na'Vi that Na'Vi wanted to play. So that was so fucking easy. That doesn't even count really as a top 4. Obviously it does, but it's the weakest top 4 finish ever by a team for my money in a major. So didn't really count that as them being an elite team. Then you get to the Star Series tournament, which they were like a round away from winning Star Series Season 4 earlier this year. That was just because s1mple was a god. That was nothing to do with Na'Vi. That was nothing to do with Zeus or their map pool or their system. And even Flamey having a few good maps, that wasn't really enough to warrant almost winning a big tournament that had all the top teams in the world in attendance. So let's talk about that for a second, because that was the real turning point, the last moment where it was just s1mple carrying this team and elevating what, in terms of other talent and overall level, should have just been a bottom end of the top 10 squad to one of the best in the world, one that could potentially win tournaments, and then later would transition to a legit elite team that it is now, that now is a legit contender for every tournament, and not just because of s1mple. Because at Star Series Season 4, I don't want to exaggerate this. I don't want it to seem like this is just hyperbole or I'm pouring superlatives on someone because I like him or I know him a lot. I legitimately think that Star Series Season 4 earlier this year was the best individual performance any player has ever turned in at a tournament in CSGO history, and that is with the context that s1mple played something ludicrous like 21 or 22 maps of play at that tournament, where in past big tournaments the most you would ever play was maybe 12, 15, an absolute stretch. And so he was playing more maps against some elite level competition. He played against the best teams in the world at the tournament. He played against FaZe. He played against Astralis in the round of 8, who at the next tournament went on to be the next dominant team. Played against Mousespots in the final. It was fucking unbelievable stuff. s1mple was so good that Na'Vi almost won the final, and a bunch of the series they won, they had no business winning some of those maps. Those were like opponents' map picks, or they were like decider maps, like Train, that they weren't very good at the time. They had no business being a team that could have won that tournament, and yet they were like a round away from winning it. They almost 2-0'd the final, with Mirage being that godlike performance from s1mple that would have 2-0'd it. But along came a really poor performance to counterbalance it from Zeus, who had like 5 kills, and one of them was from that double CZ kill. And at the same time, heroics from Chris J in overtime snatched the victory away from s1mple. He couldn't keep it going as much on Train, although he was still pretty good. And the guys also had his good performance, and Mouse was able to close it out. Think about what they were doing at that tournament, and you'll realise how utterly absurd it is that Na'Vi went that far, but on the back of what a godlike performance from s1mple. They beat Astralis in a best of 3. Astralis, with that same lineup, then went on to become the best team in the world, incredibly dominant after that. They beat FaZe Clan, still with Olafmeister, in a best of 3. That, you don't fuck around with that. That's no joke. Then they got in the final. They almost beat the Mousespots team, which at the time, after winning that tournament, some people considered the best team in the world, at least as a placeholder team, and were at their absolute peak zenith as a squad, everything working for them. And almost beat them on their map, by the way, Mirage. Then you look at the fact that godlike accomplishment, which came in spite of Na'Vi, was in a world in which, what was the map pool of Na'Vi? It was Inferno, which still didn't look that legit, a lot of wins against bum-ass teams, but okay, some good results, and it was Overpass, a map that not a lot of teams were emphasising at the time, but admittedly, Na'Vi was pretty good on, yeah, sure, largely from CT play. Beyond that, their map pool wasn't very deep, wasn't very wide. They basically had those 2 maps, and even on those 2 maps, you put them against the right opponents, you wouldn't necessarily favour them to win. So after that tournament was DreamHack Marseille, and this was the tournament where they learned their lesson. This is where you got to give credit to someone like Zeus and the coaching staff. They figured this out. They looked at what happened there, and presumably they saw some of the similar things I did, which is like, no, we can't say we almost won the event. That's great. Everything's cool. Do that again. It's like, no, we should have won this event 10 times over if s1mple's going to play like that. And if he can do all this and we don't win, we got to change something. So what they did was they took Electronic. They figured out how to make him more of a star player. They put him in the right position. They even did an interview where he said as much. And he has individually gone from strength to strength, and Na'Vi as a team has become a much, much better team. Now, probably Electronic's best strength is not just having good aim and really strong AK, it's his consistency. He gets the same kind of kills in the same kind of situation in a very logical, methodical manner, as if like he is a machine. And as a result, that is a great foundation to have with also a consistently best player in the world. That makes for an insane duo. In fact, right now, you could make a strong case that they're the best duo in Counter-Strike, considering s1mple's easily the best player by a country mile, and then Electronics becoming a pretty legit, maybe top 5 player in the world. The only people who can really contend them legitimately, I think, is Device and Dupree, and you add in, Device sometimes has his problems in the occasional final or big match they lose. Dupree's fabulous and does so much for their entries that I don't think they'd be as dominant a team without him. I think they probably overall would maybe edge it as my biggest duo in the world. Nico and Guardian on paper could challenge these 2 other duos, but I don't think they really legitimately can do it, because I've noticed in their big finals, it tends to be one or the other, doesn't it? It tends to be either Guardian going ham and where's Nico in this one, or Nico's going godlike like he was at Cologne, but where the fuck's Guardian win the match when you need him? So sadly, they don't actually work as a duo as well as these other 2 do. I think you've also got to add in, with Electronic coming into own and having a bunch of stars, now you're in a position where Zeus's style has blossomed. He's now rediscovered. It's still a very similar style to what he used to do. Sean Gares talked about it a lot, and he went very in depth if you want to know more about it. But now he's got the players to make that style work, to make the pressure elements of the style work, to make those late hits work, because you're going to get the kills. One thing I actually love that's a bit underrated about this is I feel like the key is Electronic stepping forwards, and s1mple being such a hard carry at both ends of the game, entering and winning your clutches, has allowed Flamey to just chill, not even be required to be a star. And as a result, what he contributes is more than enough. It's very, very good in a team that's got s1mple. Because the thing about Flamey is, unlike a lot of the others, he's not a player you drive, or you tell you got to do this, or you bark at. This is a guy who, he is a little bit mild-mannered. He is a little bit meek, can withdraw into his shell sometimes. He's a comfort player. He's got to feel comfortable. He's got to feel as though what he's doing is respected, as though it's part of a winning effort, and that he's not expected to do something way more and get inside his own head and force himself outside his comfort zone. That's where you'll see Flamey's talents fade away. And so that's why it was so frustrating for so many years to see him potentially be a world beater, but never quite make it. They've got this controlled Zeus style now that's so hard to deal with when it works. Now, yes, it's never going to run you over and just win map 16-5 like Astralis does. But you know what? Astralis, first of all, does that a lot by massive CT sides. Don't have to win many T sides. And yes, it's not going to run you over, but it's going to fucking grind you. And it's going to be really hard to beat that Zeus style, and especially if s1mple's going ham and Electronics there. And then you add in when they get on the CT side, okay, they're not making the most perfect reads and rotations, etc., but they are using aggression on CT side to really disrupt other teams. That's why I think they are the team that, as you saw in Cologne, are the ones that are most set up actually to beat Astralis, because they can get ahead of Astralis's setups for utility and timings and when they're lining stuff up. If they can get out there and battle them and take fights to them early and battle them even for territory on the map, then you're going to see a team like Astralis way less comfortable and way less dominant. A FaZe clan who wants to just pick the right time to pivot onto the other site and attack it with all these sick players. Good luck. There's some pretty sick players on Na'Vi right now, and they're willing to play aggressive, and they're willing to get information on you early. And this isn't a team that's fabulous at utility usage. So this is a team primed right now to have chances to beat those really elite squads. Then you look at the map pool that Na'Vi has now. Their map pool not only has gotten good, but what fucking flawless timing to have this type of a map pool. Because when they were the team that was just Inferno and some Overpass, right, at that point in time, it wasn't legit. And then even when they had the wins on it, if you'd have put them against some of the teams that were coming up, Astralis was going to become very good. Later on, you had Team Liquid become very good on the map. SK's always been able to play the map to some degree. FaZe is decent enough on it. You wouldn't necessarily bet on them every time to win that. Well, you know what? They don't even rely on Inferno anymore. That's not even their best map. That's not even the map they have to play. They'll play it as a decider like everyone else does. But the fact they don't have to rely on it is why they're so strong now, because they can still get wins on it, especially with their players. And it's always going to be a Zeus map, by the way. In all versions of Inferno and all versions of CSGO, Zeus's teams have been good on Inferno and good at grinding with that style. What they have got, though, it's a fucking sick Mirage. They might be the best Mirage team right now. I think you could make a very good case for that. While Mouse Spots has fallen off, Na'Vi seems to have gone from strength to strength. That's a map that Electronics Emergence has really helped them on. Their Overpass is still very legit. It's one of the best in the world. They can put up those massive halves on it. Their CT half can be very, very strong, especially that's another map like Mirage where they can move s1mple around and really make him dangerous and difficult to deal with. Then they've got a pretty good train. Sure, it's not their best. Sure, they're going to have to live off individual performances, but there's not that many great train teams out there right now. And so being able to play that and be good at it, if people force you to it, you can win the series. You can even, I actually think if they should start picking it even, I think that should be their joker pick sometimes against some of the teams like Astralis, like the like the phases of the world, actually, quite frankly, because I've never thought FaZe had a good read on how to play that map. Then, okay, you might think to yourself, well, what about the rest of the map pool? Well, in the past, Zeus teams, before Gambit, never played Nuke. They couldn't play Nuke. Nuke and Cash were the two they hated, and they tried to ban them all if they could and just not play them. When they have been forced to play Nuke, Na'Vi can play Nuke. Now listen, they're not Astralis. Astralis is godlike. They're pretty good. Beyond that, I'd give them a shot against anyone in the world on Nuke. They can legit play this map. You do not want to fuck with them on it, which is why I don't think you're going to see as many teams fuck with them and pick it into them as we saw over the last few months. So that's not even necessarily a factor for them. And then it's available for second rotation ban if you want. They ban Cash already, so they're never having to play that. And if they really wanted to, I do think they could get half decent on that map. But okay, they ban it anyway. The one question mark at the moment for me with Na'Vi is Dust 2. Because we've seen them forced to play it a few times. We've seen them lose it a few times now, and sometimes to lesser teams. So I do feel as though some of the top teams out there are going to start emphasizing Dust 2 and playing it into them, which might make it tougher in some of these series. But I also think they could figure it out and be okay on it. I think it's a map that, I don't think it's going to play exactly like the old Dust 2, but I think it is going to still be focused around skill. I think maybe Zeus's style on T-side's not as good, but I think you can play an aggressive CT side. I could see them having enough good players and a player like s1mple that they could get something out of it and get some wins on that map. So their map pool right now is in a really good place. It's not Astralis' because Astralis is ridiculous. But beyond Astralis, I'll go ahead and say it right now. I think Na'Vi's got the second best map pool in the world right now. Now then, now that you've got an elite team for s1mple to play on, this is going to be a crazy statement to make. I can't even believe I would say this after what happened at Star Series Season 4 or after what happened at the end of last year. s1mple doesn't need to leave Na'Vi. In fact, why the fuck would he leave Na'Vi? Where's he going to go? FaZe Clan? I think that's a gamble right now. I don't even know whether I would do that. I actually think Na'Vi finally looks like a legitimate elite team. One of the best teams in the world, a team that can accomplish great things. They're already, from the bad times when they had the not as legit results, on a streak of like 8 top 4 finishes in a row. Obviously won the last 3 tournaments they went to, including at ESL and Cologne, one with all the big teams in attendance. Sure, you can definitely say that if s1mple's level drops at all, or even a little bit, yeah, they're probably not going to be as good a team. But you know what? I think even with just a little bit of drop-off, they'll still be top 5. They're still a pretty good team. They've got the map pool, they've got the style, they've got the players. They've still got a very good player in s1mple. Even if he goes down 10%, they could still be a top 5 team, which itself is a crazy thought if you go back a few months. I think right now, this team can win any tournament and they can win the major. Now, will they? No, I wouldn't favour them for any of these tournaments if they've got the Astralis and FaZe in. But they're right behind Astralis for me. And it's neck and neck when Olaf comes back in FaZe as to whether FaZe is going to be the team behind Astralis or whether it's going to be Na'Vi. And Na'Vi obviously has something of an interesting matchup when they go against Astralis. So, good job that SK move didn't go through, right? With s1mple and Flamey going over to SK, and we never would have known what would happen, and we never would have seen Na'Vi blossom and flourish, actually into becoming an elite team. And what a great time, not just to watch the best player in the world anymore, but on a world-class team. This video was kindly supported by Dean Tanglis, Gardner Wilson, Andreas Snazore Westerlund, Alex Adams, Daniel Yordanov, TTMXMP, VeXii, HawpT, Robert Baxter and Travis Greb, with a special thanks going out to Jerky's Minion. Want teasers for my upcoming content? To ask a question for my monthly AMA? How about taking part in a discussion with me about esports? Or perhaps you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Become a part of the Scrilluminati today at the Patreon link in the description box below.